After the 2024 election, Donald Trump has returned to the public stage with a series of baffling interviews that reveal not only the absence of substantial policies, but also a deeply troubling dissonance between his campaign promises and the reality of his governance. With his usual bravado and disregard for facts, Trump continues to make outrageous claims about everything from tariffs to grocery prices, all while the media remains willing to indulge his narrative. But as we peel back the layers of his rhetoric, we see something much more disturbing: a man struggling to reconcile the promises he made with the inevitable failures of his administration. In this post-election moment, Trump's lies are exposed more clearly than ever, and his promises to America's working class about bringing down prices seem more like a cruel joke than a serious policy agenda. One of the most glaring contradictions has come from Trump's repeated assertions that he could single-handedly lower inflation and bring down prices. Yet, in his interviews, the reality is far more bleak. What happened to the promises he made? Where did these policy solutions go? Trump's rhetoric, once again, reveals a startling lack of foresight and understanding of how economics truly work. How did we get here? How did Trump's supporters go from eagerly waiting for their leader to drain the swamp to accepting empty words and hollow promises? In this video, we will examine Trump's post-election lies, particularly his broken promises regarding tariffs, grocery prices, and his misguided attempts to address inflation, all while his supporters continue to ignore the consequences. The inflation and grocery price saga: broken promises and unfulfilled expectations. One of Trump's key campaign promises was to defeat inflation and bring prices down. Throughout his run, he painted a picture of a future where American families would no longer struggle with skyrocketing grocery bills or high energy costs. He repeatedly promised his base that prices would drop and their financial burdens would lighten. "When I win, we will rapidly defeat inflation. We will destroy inflation," he claimed. Trump made grandiose promises about how his economic policies, particularly those targeting energy prices and government spending, would lead to lower costs for everyday Americans. Yet, after securing the nomination and eventually becoming president, these promises were not only broken but exposed as outright lies. One of the most dramatic revelations came during his interviews with the media, where he admitted that addressing inflation was much harder than he initially believed. In a shocking statement during his Time magazine interview, Trump confessed it's hard to bring things down once they're up, acknowledging a reality he had previously denied. This was a stark contrast to the sweeping promises he made to his supporters, who were led to believe that a simple reduction in energy costs would magically lower everything from grocery bills to fuel prices. The idea that lowering energy costs alone would bring down the prices of everyday goods has been debunked time and again by economists, yet Trump's rhetoric surrounding tariffs and the economy still hinges on this faulty premise. In his typical fashion, Trump dismissed any criticism of his tariffs, calling the word tariff the most beautiful term in the dictionary. It was as if the word itself, with no real understanding of its economic consequences, would somehow save the day. His supporters, many of whom are ardent believers in his policies, continue to champion tariffs as the ultimate solution, without acknowledging that tariffs raise costs across the board. This, of course, means that American consumers are paying the price for these so-called solutions. Trump's ongoing obsession with tariffs reveals just how out of touch he is with the reality of economic policy. While the former president has claimed that tariffs would lead to lower prices, the simple truth is that they have the opposite effect. They increase the cost of goods. And yet, his supporters continue to celebrate the very thing that is hurting them. The avocado prices may seem like a small issue, but applying the same 25% tariff to larger goods like electronics, cars, and construction materials results in much more significant price hikes. Trump's rhetoric about tariffs as a beautiful solution only serves to distract from the fact that his policies are creating real harm for the average American worker. The tariff quandary: is Trump's economic strategy really effective? It's not just the grocery prices that are affected by Trump's economic policies. His reliance on tariffs as a method of economic correction is another broken promise that has left many Americans questioning the validity of his strategy. Trump's early campaigns were built on the idea of using tariffs to punish countries like China, Mexico, and Canada for unfair trade practices. However, as his presidency progressed, the reality of these tariffs began to set in. In interview after interview, Trump insisted that his tariffs would not hurt the American consumer, but economic data tells a different story. Trump's tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of consumer goods resulted in higher prices for American consumers. The true cost of these tariffs became clear when Trump supporters who had previously cheered for them began feeling the impact at the cash register. The cost of everyday items, from electronics to construction materials, increased dramatically as the supply chain was disrupted. For example, a simple $1 avocado from Mexico became 25% more expensive, and while Trump's supporters defended this as a minor inconvenience, the reality is much more severe. When applied to bigger ticket items, such as $1,000 televisions or $25,000 cars, the effects of these tariffs are felt much more keenly. Yet, many Trump supporters remain in denial, clinging to the hope that his economic policies will ultimately deliver results. In a surreal moment during one of his interviews, Trump defended his tariff policies by calling the word tariff the most beautiful term in the dictionary. This bizarre statement encapsulates the disconnect between Trump's rhetoric and reality. While the economic consequences of tariffs are undeniable, Trump's continued insistence on their success reflects a man who is either unwilling or unable to acknowledge the damage his policies have caused. And as his supporters continue to defend these policies, it becomes clear that they are willing to overlook the negative effects in favor of blind loyalty to the man who promised them economic salvation. The broken pledge to bring prices down, energy, inflation, and empty words. Throughout his campaign, Trump promised to make America affordable again, touting his ability to lower energy costs and bring prices down across the board. His supporters, many of whom were struggling with rising costs, were eager to believe him. Trump even went so far as to say, "Prices are going to come down very substantially. We're going to bring the prices down." But as we now know, these promises were nothing more than empty words designed to garner votes, without any real understanding of the complex forces that shape the economy. During his Time magazine interview, Trump doubled down on his broken promise by admitting that, in hindsight, he was too optimistic about his ability to control inflation. He stated, "I'd like to bring them down, but it's hard to bring things down once they're up." This admission, though shocking, is actually a clear reflection of the underlying truth. Trump never had a clear plan to address inflation or bring prices down. His focus on energy prices as a solution was misguided, and his tariffs only exacerbated the problem. Trump's inability to deliver on his promises regarding inflation and price reductions has become a central theme in his post-election interviews. In addition to his failure to rein in inflation, Trump's rhetoric about the economy has revealed a man who is increasingly out of touch with the economic realities faced by everyday Americans. His refusal to acknowledge the impact of his tariffs and other economic policies only further demonstrates that his approach was nothing more than a series of misguided soundbites aimed at securing political power, rather than meaningful solutions for the American people. Donald Trump's post-election interviews have exposed the gap between his campaign promises and the harsh reality of his policies. From broken pledges about inflation and grocery prices to misguided claims about the benefits of tariffs, Trump's economic strategy is falling apart in front of our eyes. Yet, despite the mounting evidence that his policies have failed, his supporters continue to cling to his empty rhetoric, refusing to acknowledge the damage he has caused. As we move forward, it's important to recognize the dangers of blind loyalty to a leader who consistently lies about his intentions and results. The promises that Trump made during his campaign were never grounded in reality, and his post-election behavior only further proves that he is not the economic savior he promised to be. The American people deserve better than empty promises and policies that harm their livelihoods. It's time to hold Trump accountable for the chaos and economic hardship he has caused and demand a new direction for our country, one that prioritizes the well-being of everyday Americans over the whims of a self-serving politician. As we continue to unravel the lies and broken promises of Donald Trump, it's clear that his time in office has only served to exacerbate the problems he claimed he would solve. The grocery prices remain high, the tariffs continue to hurt consumers, and inflation remains an ongoing issue. Yet, through all of this, Trump remains steadfast in his belief that his words alone can change the economic landscape of the nation. It's time for a reckoning, and the American people must demand better leadership in the years to come.